resume this. So again, we're going to talk about checklists in the system. We are going to build some checklist items, but before we even get to that, I'm actually just going to show you, make sure that everybody on the call knows what they look like, both the internal view and the external view, and then we'll build them. We'll try and build under the case, the home city, and like a background check so that you get this sense of every field, like where to place fields. Again, we'll look at them from both perspectives, and then we'll get some time for questions. I think, yeah, that is, I will also address an issue that comes up sometimes when you're choosing what table to put a checklist item on. There like is a warning sign. So I want to address that to make sure that you know what to do when if that happens, or prevent that from happening. So nothing's really wrong with it. It's just warning you. It's just a warning. So with that, I'm going to jump right into SAM actually, and into a client record. So from the families cover page, and really from any cover page for any entity type, entities being families, children, birth parents, etc., there is a link on the sidebar called the case checklist. And this case checklist comes really empty by default in your system. It just won't have any items because this is some of the customization that is done based on your program. So what do you want your workflow to be? Checklist items are made up of date fields, and date fields can be connected to documents. That's really what most folks are using the checklist for. And really a checklist item here is literally the date that we say that is done, right? So kind of think of an old-fashioned piece of paper checklist. Instead of having a check mark, we're just entering the date that got completed, that kind of thing. Checklists can have a due date. So the due date is obviously the day that it's due to whoever is responsible to get that done. Some checklist items don't make sense to have a due date because they're the first, they're the first task to be completed in a section, or perhaps they're for the family to get done, or the client. And so we're not necessarily putting a response time on that. I'll show you how that response time works when we go and build one. So there is a due date. You can notice that it does say edit here. So you can actually add due dates. So if there was not a due date established in the configuration, you can still update that. You can also click over a date and change the date. Now, I have a feeling like I can do this, that it may be something that only full administrators can do, is edit the due date. So I would check on that if that's a feature that you're thinking that you want. I do have a feeling that that's a full admin only sort of a function. Dates can be entered manually by clicking on the edit links here. You can also use the check mark to mark it as complete. And that will just enter today's date. Just like the due date, you're able to overwrite that. SAM will calculate the time between the due date and the response date if, in fact, there is a due date in it. A negative number means that got done earlier. A positive number means that it's actually behind. The responsible worker can be set as well. So again, just like the other fields, you can go in here and just add somebody to it. Just because I'm doing this, I really don't remember if that is a full admin only. If you guys really want, as we get towards the end of this presentation, I can log out and log in as somebody else and test that out and see. Okay, so you are able to add somebody, or you can see here, this is the social worker or case manager on file. So nobody, or on this record, no one is assigned, I suppose, at the moment. But if I assign someone, let's just see, let's put this person in. their name will show up on the checklist. Okay, so you can see that that person now is, and anywhere else that there might have been the role assigned, that person's name is now in here. You can have a memo. The memo really is a text box. That's all it is right now. So it is whatever you want. There's not a way to put the memo that's coming from the checklist configuration onto here. So this is really a very specific memo for each of these checklist items. And it's just to give you a little heads up. You know, maybe you want to add something about the application here. I honestly don't know who or if that is a well-used function of the system or not. So you guys could let me know.
I use it.
You use this here? Yeah, because I didn't really know.
We use it too.
You do? Okay. All right. Awesome. Awesome. So that's great to hear. What kind of things are you guys putting into that memo?
Well, sometimes they'll submit a document, but it's incomplete. So if I write the word incomplete, it shows that I've checked it once, and I know that I need to check it again before I approve it. I'll take the date out if it's incomplete, and I'll give them a call and have them update it.
Okay.
I put that we've received it, so it's here. If it is a memo where the document is actually located somewhere else, I'll give a heads up as to where it's located. Like, for example, in docs or on the cover page. So.
Okay. Okay. And I think
we write notes to each other. So if somebody's doing something in the application process that someone else would need to know in home study process, and there's some sort of special circumstance, then we note it there. So it's kind of like how we communicate with each other about things that are slightly out of the ordinary on the checklist.
Gotcha. And then would you also like Jen said, would you remove the memo? Like she's removing incomplete. Would you remove that, or do you just sort of leave that there?
It depends what it is.
Okay.
If it's done and resolved, yes, I would remove it. Otherwise, we leave it there because it's just sort of like it's an additional communication spot for us.
Okay. All right. That's helpful to know. Thanks, you guys.
We don't use the memo column. Is there a way to put in a column for like expiration dates?
Documents are handled really, and I'll start to talk about this, but I would handle documents in the documents section in order to put documents in. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And as I'm moving sort of over to the right, we're now going to talk about documents, and I'll show you where documents go and then how you can add expiration dates to that. Okay. Yes. So as I just mentioned, documents are applicable here. This is really like, I feel like people are using documents a lot in SAM to like through the checklist because of the way that you can view it from the client side, which I'll go into in a little bit. It is a nice way to share documents sort of in a linear format of we need these different documents, and you can offer documents to download documents that they need to complete or fill out, and then the family or client can scan and upload that document to you. I will use the term document to be specific to like a PDF or an Excel or a Word doc or something like that, or a photo, something that is uploaded into the site versus a form. And so on checklist, the documents look like this. We, of course, are on a family's, like a client's checklist, what has triggered for this client. So this has been uploaded. This has not been uploaded. And in the case where Jen was talking about and Karen, right, they would say, you know, something like incomplete, even though it appears that this is done, as a note to sort of remind and notate that this is not actually done. So you are able to download the document here. And that document also goes into the document, what I kind of started calling it the document repository. It is a spot where all documents, no matter where they're uploaded on this client record, are pulled together in one view. And here is where I would recommend adding expiration date and other details about that document. Like you might, you know, who is that document specifically for? does it need to be approved? What sort of, there is a category on here, but you can also add other notes. You're also for sure able to add other fields to this section if you wanted to, have other ways of denoting the document. Okay. The other thing.
Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Steph, this is Nicole.
Hey, Nicole.
That list that you just showed, is that also available on the foster list?
This right here, this documents? Yes. Yeah. So really what I'm talking about with checklists today is any of the entity types. So it works on family, on foster family, on birth parent. The checklist and the way that the documents connect all work the same way.
Okay.
Yep. So you will see that document repository. Like if I go in over here, we'll see it. Oh, okay. I don't know what kid names are in this site. Let's go in here. And I'll open up a foster family too. I also don't know the names in this site. There we go. It's nice. So youth have a checklist. There's nothing entered in here because this is also a new site. So there's very little added so we can play with it more. And then there's the document section and it works the same. And here's a foster family and is same thing. Checklists and documents all function the same. So if I upload a document to the checklist or like the family does, it will also go into the foster family's document.
Okay. So show me if I was going to do that. I must have missed it.
Yep, it's the same thing. So I don't think that there's a checklist over here. Nothing that has a document on it. But if it did have the little blue icon, let me jump back on the family side. The blue icon like this. You upload it. Well, actually, rather here, you're going to upload it here. And that document will be accessible here, but it will also be accessible in the documents section.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So I don't know if, Jen, I think online has that's on today has been on maybe using SAM the longest. Is that how your team manages documents, Jen?
With putting them in other sections?
Once they go into the document repository, do you go in there and add other, like once it really is approved, the expiration date, who it might be for, or notating like it's for both parents because they scanned everything together, or I don't know, whatever. There could be all kinds of things that happen.
We have other documents in the document list. For example, let's say they send us a medical report that is not part of the checklist. We'll dump it in the document list so that we still have it, right? So really the checklist is for items that we need the parents to submit to us, but are the normal set of items. If they send us a divorce decree, for example, we don't include that in the checklist, we put it in the document list.
Got it. And I will, maybe if I get there, if we have some time today, I will talk to you about adding onto the checklist miscellaneous documents like this. I think this site is set up that way. And if not, I'll log into a different site and show you what I'm talking about. But basically, and what that is like adding the document subform onto the checklist with a add button that they can literally just upload miscellaneous things like a divorce decree. If you had chosen, like you guys did, to not include it in your checklist.
That would be awesome.
Okay, I'll show you that. Okay, the other thing that is here is some of the document or some of the checklist items rather are linked to forms. So I very well understand, in English, form and document can kind of be used interchangeably, but in SAM, I needed to separate that out so we can point you in the right direction. A form is a screen basically that the family or your staff are going to enter data into. You're going to be doing data entry into the system. So this is going to take us, I think, to the it should be taking us to the application form, right? Where our team can come and edit this if we need to, if we've retrieved more information from the family. On the family side, they will see that checklist item as a form to upload instead of as a document. And right about now, I'm feeling like it might be a good time to transition to what the family sees. Okay, let me talk about how to get there. So the checklists are public forms. Public forms are those types of forms that you would share with a client, an end user, somebody external to your system, somebody that does not have access to log in through the homepage of SAM, right? So I have seen agencies give like a link to a form that you don't have to log into on their website, like a child referral form or a foster family referral form. Those would be public forms. Application forms could also be given online for families to complete information. So those are all stored here. And everything that we see here are forms that are enabled. So you may have this list, and if you're new and like Nightlight, theirs is incredibly, I'm thinking about this little scroll button here. It's like really small because they have probably hundreds, if not thousands of forms at this point in their site. So the list can be incredibly long. It is showing us, I believe it is the form title or the form name, which is something that you can manage what you want to call that form. Okay, so I'm really going to talk about forms and form customizer, but I want to make sure you see the checklist. So there is a checklist under each entity type. Okay, this like birth mother client checklist, child client checklist, you should see that under each entity type. I do believe which is pretty rare if we ever build a new entity type in the system, I think we have to do something special to make the checklist show up on our end. It's not just automatic, but these are all throughout. This is called the foster family public checklist. Okay. The checklist is a form that requires a login from the end user. I'm going to throw another term at you because I use it internally and through like help guides and stuff. Users are your staff. End users are clients or people external to your site that do not have a login to your system. Those end users can log in to public forms, but they would never be able to log in right to your home page, to your login screen of SAM. I'll log out again. Oops, excuse me. Right, they wouldn't be able to log in here. This is a login screen for your users. These guys, this is the checklist. And if I log out, this is what, something like this is what the family or end user will experience. It depends on what your HTML looks like, right? What you wanted, what you have set it up to look like, or what we've helped you set it up as. Okay, so to log in as an end user or a family user, they need an email address that's on their record and a password. If they don't have a password because it's their first time here, they can click forgot or don't have a password. SAM takes them to this screen where it's looking for their email and their last name, and it will send them an email. You do have to have email sending settings enabled for that to work. Okay, so that's if you are brand new, which some of folks are today, you have to have the sending settings set up that it kind of walks you through in the Get Started guides. So from here, I'm going to hope that I have the right password, and I'm going to log in as the end user or the family into the checklist. So from their visibility, what do they see? They can see, what do I want to talk about here first? I guess I'll start from the top. So the branding and messaging is all yours. When we were over on the settings page and this public form links, if you wanted to edit the checklist, you get, as a full admin, you can click here edit, and this is where, you know, I can edit the messaging here, and I could add other fields to this, like I've added their name and the case navigation. I might add the social worker's name, things like that onto the screen. That's going to be up to you to decide. I do get the question often of, can this section up here be as long as the other? It's can't today. It is this width because it's how it looks if it's a single column. If it is, even though I get these are checklist sections, and so they just have different margin widths than this does. If I added a second column over here, add a section, it will widen out. I'm pretty sure. Fresh, yeah. So that sort of brings it out. So it's just Sam's, like how that functions, okay? So each checklist section should mirror what it shows in the family side. So I'm going to sort of be transitioning between what our families look at and the internal side to make sure that you're seeing that. So remember, the checklist is over here, and I'm going to hide a section. This is the application process here. Here's the application process here. Each checklist item within a section can be set by administrators to be visible to end users or not. So while internally you may have, and like we have here in this case, 3 checklist items, externally, we're not showing the family the application approved date. That's just something that we're doing internally. So we're hiding that from their visibility. Families can see due dates. So if we apply a due date, that due date will show. If there are no due dates, this will not, the due date column itself, I believe is hidden. The date complete is the date that documents are uploaded to the site. So, yeah, it is not, let me see, what do I want to say? How do I want to say this? It's not the date of the document or the like approval of the document. It literally is the date that document was uploaded to the site is what the checklist is recording. Okay. As I think there's a difference, and that's where you would use that document section to put, this is the signature date. This is the date that we approved it. This is the expiration date, things like that. You can offer to families a document to download, so they can download this adoption agreement, and then they would fill that out. Usually those tend to be PDF pre-fills. I see Word documents, things like that are provided. It really is going to depend on what your team has developed for those. And when it has a document to like when it's not been uploaded, it has this little folder. So the family can come in and they'll choose the document that they need to upload here. There you go. And then it will transition, the icons will transition to the little like check mark, and the date will be marked as complete. Okay, and so you can see that date here, and this is transition. Families cannot re-download the document. They actually have those documents on their local drive because they literally just uploaded it. So it doesn't really need to happen. And these documents here, it basically is like the families have to have permission, and they don't have access to see that again. I guess the last thing that I'll talk about here is the difference, again, between the document and a form. So if we want the families or clients to complete due data entry and like key data into the site, that can be set up and forms can be linked. On when we want the date completed to be done on one of these forms, let's see, how do I want to say this? It's like on forms, there is a setting that when you hit submit, it can automatically enter data, right? So it might automatically enter at the end of the application that the application receive date equals the current date. It might also update the case stage as application, because at this point, we're now transitioned from an inquiry phase to an application phase. So this, though, is a form, and it allows the family to actually key in this data. Okay. And really, I'm about to transition over to the building of the forms, or the checklist rather, so that everybody can see that and re-reference this. But this workflow it's just not built into SAM. Most agencies, like, the workflow is approximately the same. However, this allows you to customize it to your terminology, and the way that you want to order and structure things, so that it works best with your team and your clients. So every checklist item needs to be built. And so let's go and do that. Couple ways to access the checklist configuration. When you're on a family checklist, as a full administrator, you see View Family Checklist Configuration on the right, and you can click this here. You might also access it through Settings, Checklist Configuration. Once you get here, you'll decide what entity type. And so we'll click into here. So I purposely left the warning at the top here, and I'll talk to that in a few minutes. I do want to add some checklist items to this so that you can, again, re-reference this information. So to add something new to your checklist, you'll click Add Item from the sidebar, and you have options to either select an existing checklist section, or you can create a new name. So if it's here, I might add something to the inquiry section. The next selection, or prompt rather, that Sam's asking is, well, what field? So every checklist item is a field. And if you remember from earlier on, it's also a date field. Something I don't love about the system is that Sam is showing us also non-date fields. It does this, you can tell really clearly when it has these parentheses and the enter date, that is not a date field. But this section, this part really does need to be a date field, because again, it is marking the date that it was received. And so I always tell folks to just exclude this, like just look past all of these and look for the fields that you're using. A lot of times for folks who are new, you are not really selecting fields, you're actually building fields. So I will show that the next go round, okay? Right here, I'm going to add a field, and I'm going to pull in the inquiry packet sent date. So any fields that have been built at other points in time in your system are pullable through checklists here too. I did want to also acknowledge here, I selected the table pretty quickly because I work here all the time, so that I know where these fields exist, but you have a list of different tables. Every field is not on the case table because it may not be appropriate for what the purpose of that field is, right? So if you're talking about home study or licensing process, it's going to be on those tables is where you should put those fields. We see a lot of background check fields and like persons in home, but I don't see that here. So I'll show that too. Oh, there it is. Yeah, persons in home. Right. So it's like, I need a medical report, or need a birth certificate for every person that lives in the home. You might have 0 people in the home, and then this checklist section wouldn't open if it were based around that field. Or if I've got 3 people living in the home, now I've got space to have 3 separate birth certificates. Okay. That sort of information, like persons in home, is generally provided by families if they are keying in that information like on an application form, on an earlier step in your process. Okay. Beneath the field selection, you've got the response time. So I could say, you know, I want this to be done within 2 days from the inquiry received date. And so whatever the inquiry received date is, I'll always have a due date +2, okay, from that date. I can set a responsible employee. Either it defaults as not set, or I can choose somebody very specific, or I might set it by the role, where I'm choosing the caseworker, the adoption coordinator, or whoever is working, whoever is responsible for that part. It's going to vary between each of your cases, okay, to whoever is tasked with that role. These are also roles that are established. This may not, like, I kind of think that this is common, but it may not be. Roles that are established on the record, right? So it is like this case worker field. If I were pulling the home study, it's going to pull the home study writer that's specified on the home study records, right? So if I pulled the home study worker, it'd be Mark Peterson when we're talking about this home study that he's doing, versus this home study just doesn't have a home study worker added yet, okay? If you have a document or if this item has a document associated with it that you want to upload at the same time, like a contract or the birth certificate, we can either select or create. If you want the family to upload it, or the end user, it has to be one of these two choices. If it is just internal to your team, you could select the document type. But most often these days, we're creating document types at the same time. When you do this, it automatically is building a document field, and it labels it the same and just appends document upload at the end, because you can't have two fields with the same field title in the database. And then usually we're creating like the same. We want in that document repository section for it to be labeled the same. In this situation, none of this actually makes any sense. So I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to cancel all of that, and that's done. If I want a document to be shared with my family or my client, I can mark it as to be shown. And here is where I'm able to add the document that I need them to download and complete. So what I see a lot of times is agencies are providing instructions here. So instructions of how to do background checks, instructions on, or literally providing the contract or the agreements, the ROIs and things like that. Excuse me. If and in addendum 2, you can actually have a form. So you're always going to have families that don't want to enter forms for whatever reason. That's fine. You can add a document and link a form if you want, right? So if you want a family to be able to download the application form, and for those families who want to also do the data entry into the system, you could have both. So this is going to show us a list of public forms. Again, those forms that are designed or have settings designed specifically to be shared with external users. And I would just like choose something in the list, right? This right here allows me to give memos or instructions to the client. Let me see if I can show. It's like this right here. It's for this specific checklist item, and it falls right beneath that item, just a little bit of information to kind of help them through in your expectations for completing that form. I see that used quite a bit. You're also able to add criteria. So you might have a contract for, let's say for foster care, like a kinship family versus a traditional foster care family. You can actually have the same two separate checklist items pulling the same contract field that are giving a different document for download, and the way that Sam knows which one to do is based on this criteria. So I would say, case type equals kinship care versus case type equals traditional foster care in the criteria. When you're adding criteria, you'll select the table, right? A lot of criteria I see is primarily going to be in these top two tables, because there are things like, well, the family state is this, and that is going to be on the family table, versus the case program might be on the case field. I do think actually if you're building things on the home study, you might have this document's only applicable for the original home study. It's not actually needed for the updated home study, or vice versa. Okay, you might have simpler things going on. So let me actually choose that. When I choose the case, then I will choose the field that I want to filter by, like case program, and say that it is for domestic, right? I happen to be in the adoptive family side right now. There is also a memo configuration, or configuration memo for this checklist item. This is really only shown to full admins who are configuring the checklist. So as a user, you're not seeing it. As an end user, you're definitely not seeing it. End user memos are here. The user memos are more on the checklist itself. Once that checklist has been triggered for the record, like this incomplete. Okay, once this is entered in here, all of this information, I can press save. And the item will always go to the bottom of the checklist section that we're building, like we can see here. I can edit the item order through the sidebar, and this will add little drop-down boxes where I can change the section or modify what row if I wanted. In this case, this ordering makes sense, but I could always change that if I wanted to. Right, like I might change this and approve it down at the bottom after we've gotten the agreement as well. I can click back to go to the default view. Because we have items that are commingled between those that are shown to clients and those that are not shown to clients, I can view client items, and now I'm seeing just those items that the end user sees. So I can study this a little bit better when I'm setting things up. Let me go back to the default view. You could also, some agencies have like an extremely long list of checklists because they have lots of programs, ways that so the system sort of gets cloggy. We know this. So this is the option to make it so that it's not so stuck, so it doesn't hang so long and take so long to move through. And it also is like just to see what you're working on at that one specific time, like narrow your focus. I can look at just the parent education section, and the rest of those items are hidden from my view so that I can manage this by itself. And I like that because eventually these checklist sections get pretty long, and you're sort of like, where am I in the process of this, in the building of it? So something I haven't mentioned, but I feel like really needs to be said is I do not recommend coming into the checklist configuration brand new and just like starting to build it here. You should really be on a piece of paper, on some sort of shared document before you come into SAM and have outlined what your process looks like so you feel comfortable with it. I think it's also when you're on that, doing that process, denoting, where are there transitions between tables, right? So things that we do once are going to be on the case. Things that we do within the home study process are going to be on that. If we're talking about the background check process, it's going to be on that table. If we're talking about people in home, this applies for these people in home, it's on that table, right? So everything is not on the same table. Because often we're tracking history and we need to say this related to the first home study and this additional information relates now to the new home study. So oftentimes users who are kind of new to the site and are starting configuration for the first time get these warnings. And that is exactly what this warning is saying, is that this in this section, the parent education section, there is a field based on the case, but the parent education section itself apparently is not based on the case. So we can edit the checklist item. We can click this link here, and this is going to take us into the section. And it tells us that the section table is based around the home study, and we have this case-based field on it. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. You just need to think through whether that field needs to be entered. You need to keep the history of it, or you just want it to be entered one time for that case. Because our cases can be long in some situations, if they're in the adoption process still, or if their foster home license is active for a long period of time, you're going to have lots of licenses, right? Or lots of home study records, because you're constantly, annually, generally, or biannually updating that information. So making a decision on what table does it go on is important. And that is literally all of these big, huge, scary warnings are saying, is like, is it okay for it to be here? You can absolutely dismiss the alert. So if in this situation, I've got 3 home study checklist sections triggered for a family because they've been with us for 3 years, this case field that's like create new title, whatever it is representing, would be filled in on each of those checklist sections already with the exact same date. And if I overwrote that date, it will overwrite it on all 3 sections, right? Because it literally is the same date. So something like the application agreement, if you put that on the case table, but you wanted to see it for every home study, you can absolutely do that. And in those situations, you would dismiss the alert. Otherwise, you have to fix it. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if like Karen, you remember, but I think for the most part, as users or full admins are not really able to move fields from one table to the next. So what it requires is either connecting with me so that I can help you do that, because I think I have the ability to do that, or you can disable the field and rebuild it on the proper table. That's really what your choices are. Which again is like, you don't really want to build things that you don't really need. You really want to think through what your process is first. And if you're new, let me open, oops, not that one, but the help guides here. There we go. I really recommend getting into this section of the guides, and you can click through like having a supporting successful implementation. These documents here will kind of walk you through thinking about systems, like building this process. I think there are some worksheets attached in there as well to get you started. But certainly that's what I do with folks nearly every day, is going to set that stuff up. Let's see. I've already kind of shown this, but I'll show it again. You can hide things. Another way to sort of focus your time. You can certainly X out of things, right? So you could click this off. If you are in the configuration, this is affecting the future configurations. So if I delete these items off of here, any family or record that gets this checklist section triggered for it would no longer have like this home visit date if I were to check this off. Okay, so let's actually talk about triggering, because that's important, and then I'm going to show it on a new record. Gosh, if I knew what, I've got it written down. Okay, so each section can be triggered. You could absolutely have all these sections triggered at the same time, or you might step through the process in time with the client. So for example, if a family just inquired and we haven't approved them to do the application or whatever your process is to get them to the next step, is it really important to see things about completing the home study? Probably not, because it literally like doesn't matter for that record. But once the application has been approved, now we want to see the home study process. So you can sort of make determinations of when do you want these sections to populate. They need to, well, Sam is really going to allow you to choose. You've got two choices for triggering sections. It could be done from this section in here. So again, just it feels kind of far away. This, like a long time ago, I clicked this button. I can click here, right, on any of these to see my options for how to trigger. I am choosing a table. What table is it? Generally, it's going to be the first item of that checklist section, unless it is the last item of the checklist section prior. So the application process, we've got it set up right now for application receive date, but maybe we actually have it when we enter the inquiry packet or when we do this inquiry follow-up date, or some agencies have an orientation. I just don't need the application process unless it's ready for that record, okay? So it allows you some options there. The other way that you can trigger is through an auto action. And that would be if it is, I don't know, I'm about to say like if it's criteria as far as like case program is domestic versus international or kinship versus traditional foster care, something like that, or the state equals this, but you can do that through here as well. I think it's just a separate way. And I'm not going to talk about building an auto action today because that can be kind of complicated for folks, but know that that is a possibility. Generally, it's going to be if there's lots of criteria is why you would have that or do that section. Then just like I showed on the checklist items, the checklist criteria work the same here. And this is just, this entire section shows up for program A versus program B. Let's see, that's programs is kind of the biggest thing, or states, I think is the second biggest thing. I can also put in a memo. Oh, for displaying these checklist sections to families, there is this really little button, enter client checklist section settings, that opens up. And this allows us to have an internal name up here called the application process, and maybe like a welcome to our program as the messaging that the client sees. Okay, I can add really simple instructions here. I could add a template through this list here. This is a list of all family templates. And this templated list gives us the ability to put images and links, and you can really go do very interesting things with the templates if you wanted to. Okay, so you can keep it simple or add a template. Let me show you what this looks like then on the checklist. Sort of the differences. So even though this section was called application process, it now has a new name for our families of welcome to our program, right? It's got the same dates in here, but we can title it differently. I'm going to show you one. Okay. This has these clearances. This is what the messaging looks like if I put it in the section. So there's this ability to put instructions for the section directly above the items within the section. But here I've actually also added a template. And, this is a quick, like I built this in Canva sort of a thing. Very quick, easy to do. If you like something like that, you could put that in, okay? And or like an icon. I've seen icons, like really colorful icons that are links. You could also provide links to get to additional resources like the state sites or what pages to your web page or links to your web page, things like that. Okay, so it's just going to depend on what makes sense to you to put there. I think most folks are probably going with a simple like instructions at the top. And there's a lot of these background check sections. Yeah. Okay, so that is what I will show you there. To Jen, and really to everybody, this is what I was talking about of showing. This is specific to expiring documents, but you can actually pull, we talked about this really early on, a subform of documents and put it onto the checklist as well. So I think the master site is set up with like miscellaneous documents. This one's just showing expiring documents where we can provide, you know, a driver's license that expires 2 months from now, but everything else doesn't. You don't have to worry about it for another 10 months. The expiring documents can be shown here so that the family can come in here and upload this, okay, or edit. And so this is sort of, this is just a form that they're filling out. We provide what fields we want to display, keeping it pretty small here. And this, I think, is also a modified list from our document list. It is just document types that the family may share with us. You might even have something called like a list item just as other and have a document memo here where the family can describe what that document is. Okay. If like the document list just becomes too much, you might even just have it as just showing the document memo, and they never assign the document type, right? That might be something that your team does instead of the family. But that's what that looks like. Let's see. I believe I've covered most things that I wanted to talk about. I would love, because we're sort of coming up on time, to hear from you. What sort of questions do you have? If anybody's there, it's so quiet, I can't tell. Yes, people are here.
Stephanie, can families see, how do you limit what communications families can see versus what staff might be doing with each other?
You mean like right here, this subform here?
Yes. Yes.
I have set this subform up to show it's filtered, right? It's filtered list where the case communication type, some field like that. Let's actually look at it. This is the modification. This is the checklist. So this is the subform that I've got on here. If I go to this specifically, I filtered it down here on communication topic type equals update family on progress, or it's family's update from the portal. And so when the family adds a new communication, like maybe you want them, maybe in your instructions above, you've told them, click the communications to let us know when you're completely done with step 2. Okay, that's one way of doing this. So when they like, I'm done with step 2, right? When they hit save, remember I talked about on save forms can automatically set a value to the record that it is up, that's being updated. In this case, the family is adding a communication record, and on submit I've set in the background that the communication topic type equals update from family, whatever this is, family's update from the portal. When it equals that, that's a trigger for Sam, through an auto action that could send your team an email or the social worker an email to let them know that the family communicated there. You might also have those communications filtered on the home page, right, of the family's record. So you can see all of the family communications where they are updating you, right? Like that could be done too. Does that make sense to you, Karen?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And yours might have that communication in there. And again, this is sort of like I made these up. If you don't like those list items, you can build your own list items. And but again, it's just like filtering to it. What else? Are there any other questions that you're thinking about? Is anybody in the process of building checklists right now? Oops. Got a question in chat. Let's see. Birth certificate mother, birth certificate father. They are on the home study table. Is this incorrect? What is the advantage of moving them to the persons in home table? Right. No, Stacy, for the excuse me, for the mother and the father, I probably would leave them on the home study table. Persons in home, putting them on the persons in home is like if they're filling out the application and they say, I've got grandma and 2 kids that live in the home, and you need to get the birth certificate for those people. On the checklist, there's kind of no way to do that. The check, right? Like there's not really through just the home study record, because we don't know if a family is going to come in with 0 people that live in their home or 5 people that live in their home, right? We just don't have any idea. So when they are adding a person in home record through the application is generally where people are doing that. The fact that a person in home exists of a certain age could insert a checklist section that's based off person in home that provides the medical form and the birth certificate and maybe a clearance record or something like that. Okay, so you're getting more specific when you have people in home. Yep, good. Are you adding the application? Your family is entering the application yet? Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Good. Any other questions? I do think that's it. I mean, the conversation on checklists is lengthy. I would say if you decide to work with me, it probably takes like between 5 and 6 hours to set things up, to really walk it through. Like, is there a thing? When you're building these, I would always have a family record, a test record, and test records need to have the password, right? So you need to have that password set up. Going through the process of creating the password, like the family does, is only going to be a benefit to you. Logging in, seeing what it looks like. And when you feel, that checklist section is done, you can't do any more with that. Let that test record go. Create another one. Get used to that muscle memory, that building that muscle memory. Okay. So let's see. After here, I wanted to let you know the next webinar is next week, May 19th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And the goal of that is to, like, if you're in the middle of working on your checklist, please bring your questions and we will get into your site. We do not record that. I don't think if we're doing configuration, we might record it, but we won't ever look at real data. So you can feel confident that that information is going to be secure, but it is an hour of time to get my help. And come and I will set things up, because your real life questions, that is really, really helpful to other folks. So please consider coming to that if you can. Also, just want to let you know how to get support. So the support link in SAM to ask questions. You can use the call link to schedule time, the help button to go through the knowledge base. All of our webinars are hosted online, or those that you can RSVP for. Folks should be getting emails to remind you that these webinars are coming up, but you can also go to inreachsolutions.com/events. Happy if you want to connect with us on social media, that would be great. And the last thing that I'll just say is thank you. I think that's good for today. Thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to see everybody and have you in conversation. Looking forward to talking. Cool. All right. Bye, you guys. Bye, Jen. Bye, Jenna Lynn. Bye-bye. Thank you.